Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad podcast with Chris Finn, a production of P4S Golf. Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. My name is Chris Finn. I'm your host, and today we're going to address a topic that actually I got a message from somebody who has been working with us at P4S Golf for a while. Actually, have gotten a couple of messages probably over the last 3-4 months, even just from people that have like kind of in the community. Maybe they, some are working with us, some are not. But they're definitely aware they've taken the home assessment. They've kind of tried to figure out where their body's at initially. And the question is, hey, I took the assessment. I started doing some stuff. Like, when should I reassess? How frequently should we be reassessing our bodies? What's reasonable in terms of expectations, in terms of like when change should occur? So I wanted to dive into that a little bit today because it's clearly a topic people have questions on. So let's start from the beginning. Everybody should do, if you haven't done it, go ahead and do the home assessment. Where that home assessment came from is basically a decade of research. We started out looking at everything. So think of every major golf fitness organization out there, from Catalyst Performance Institute to there's the Czech group. Like, we looked at all of the different ones, all the different research, every assessment people were doing. And we basically started with like literally every single test. And we just started tracking data on everybody. And then what we started to look at was change data. And that's the big difference of our database, is we track people over time. Well, the reason being is I wanted to see if people got better. Did things that we had tested matter, right? Like, did they improve? And that could be, directly to start correlated, meaning, hey, your hamstring mobility got better and your club head speed went up. So, right, that would be correlated. Causational would be, hey, if we can prove that if you increase your hamstring length by X amount of inches, then your club head speed goes up X amount of miles an hour. And there's a direct relationship every single time there of hamstring length causes club head speed gain. Okay. It doesn't, just FYI, but I'm just using that as an example, a simple example. So don't go stretching your hamstrings, because it actually does nothing except help you improve your deadlifts maybe. But that's usually not a hamstring length issue. It's more of a movement pattern issue. But I digress. So let's get out of that rabbit hole, coming back up to mainland here. So you're going to go. So basically we took all of those tests, and basically what we did is we were able to boil it down to there's 4 mobility tests that actually have impact performance-wise in the golf swing, from both a club speed perspective, a consistency perspective, and an injury risk, decreasing injury risk perspective. There are basically 2 general movement patterns that are important in terms of flexion and extension, and that's more so not necessarily for the golf swing, but for the gym and understanding what types of movements people will be safe or not unsafe to do. So which ones that they're okay doing, like for instance, if your flexion pattern, bending down to touch your toes, sucks, probably going to struggle like doing deadlifts off the ground. So we're going to have to work on improving your hinge pattern or your flexion pattern so that you can do hinge strengthening work, because that's extremely important. Because we know that then we looked at strength and power metrics, and that's where we know the specific ratios relative to body weight of how much push strength do you need from like a bench press, how much squat strength, how much hinge strength, like a deadlift. What are the numbers that we want to get to optimize decreased injury risk as well as maximal club head speed, right? And longevity ultimately is the number one goal that we're looking for. And then we were able to boil it down to really 2 power tests, 1 lower body, 1 upper body, that actually have causational impact on club head speed, meaning if they go up, so does club head speed, right? There's lots of other tests out there that don't have that causational relationship, like ones like a sit up and throw with a medicine ball. That's a popular one in the fitness world, in the golf fitness world. Does not actually have a causational relationship. Neither does like a shot put throw. Has a correlation, shot put, but it does not have a causational, right? So if shot put goes up, but vertical leap and a seated chest pass do not, the club head speed ain't going up, right? It only is meaningful if one of the other 2 go up, right? So that's where we took all that data and information over the last 10 years plus, and we boiled it down into this home assessment, which literally takes you less than 5 minutes. So all this is to say, if you haven't taken it, that's where it comes from. Go take it. The link is always in the show notes whenever I talk about it, just because I think it's such a valuable resource for everybody listening. Now, once you've taken that home assessment, let's say you've now gone and implemented something at the gym, right? Maybe you did it working with us one-on-one in our remote private coaching program. Maybe you've done it on the basically the free on-demand DIY side of things. We'll make sure you have links in the show notes so you guys can check those out if you haven't. Or maybe you went to the gym on your own and you just pulled some stuff offline, or you thought, hey, I'm going to try just doing my own workout, right? Maybe you have a fitness history, you played sports in high school or college, and you wanted to give it a shot. You think you know what exactly to do. So now you've gone and you've done this program. So the question is, at what point should you reassess? Okay. So the 4 mobility tests, your hip rotation, your shoulder rotation, your trunk rotation, and your neck rotation, you should reassess that. You should see an improvement from day 0 to 2 weeks. You should see an improvement from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and from 4 weeks to 6 weeks. Every 2 weeks in the first 6 weeks. If you're really bad, maybe the first 8 weeks. You should be retesting just to make sure you're continuing to get better. Okay. If you're not, then what you're doing isn't right. It's not working. So do something different. Like, don't, definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If you're doing something and not getting results, well, change it, right? So maybe you got results early on, you're doing a lot of tissue work, but then you keep doing only tissue work and your results don't necessarily, they kind of hit a plateau, right? Well, now you need to go to challenging passive movement or active assisted or maybe active or resisted movement in those ranges, right? You need to kind of move up the ladder. So for mobility, I would say every 2 weeks, you should be reassessing for the first, let's say conservatively 3 months, okay, 12 weeks. After that, I would just check it kind of, once every, 4 to 8 weeks, right? Once you've kind of passed all the mobility tests, you're just looking to maintain it. So I would just check it every month or so, just to make sure that nothing's locked up. Or if you feel something kind of getting tight, recheck it, right? So that's the other thing. Maybe your back is feeling tight after a round of golf. You've passed all the mobility tests. You're like 2 months out after passing for the first time, everything. Your back starts to get a little tight. Just reassess your hip. Did your hip tighten up? Oh yeah, my hip's not moving well. Oh, okay, well, clean up your hip and I bet your back pain goes away. Like, not rocket science, guys. Right. That's the beauty of it, is it actually becomes a diagnostic tool afterwards, which is really neat. And that's a incredibly powerful tool that you can use to empower yourself to assure your longevity in the game. So that's the mobility recommendation. In terms of the strength and power recommendations, once you do the initial, I would say there's no point in testing your strength and power for at least 8 weeks, because there's going to have to be physiological changes that occur. That just takes more time. So generally, some point in the first, the end of 2 months to 3 months, so 8 to 12 weeks is kind of where I do your first test of that. And then after that, again, kind of once a quarter. So I'd say like 4 times a year, retest. If you started a new program or a phase, maybe 8 weeks in, check it. And just to see where you're at, see if that physiological adaptation has been occurring, and if we need to change stuff, right? So that's at a very low base level. Once you've passed all your mobility tests, you're kind of at once a quarter. You're just retesting, going through, see where you're at, making sure you're at least worst case maintaining. If ideally you're gaining, that's technically in the body you're either gaining or you're losing. There's no kind of maintain, but hopefully we're seeing those sorts of changes. And the reason I say there's no maintaining is because physiologically, particularly when we get into our 60s and 70s and 80s, like every month we get older, like our body is technically like wants to decline. So staying the same in those tests in your late 60s, 70s, like staying the same on those tests is actually gaining, particularly relative to the rest of the population who's declining, right? But again, I digress, went down a little rabbit hole there. But so every 2 weeks for mobility, at least in the first 3 months. After that, we go to a quarterly testing, like retesting cadence, just to make sure that everything you're doing is continuing to keep you where you want to be. And that's it. Like I said, the cool thing about the testing is you can also use it a little bit as a diagnostic. Your elbow starts flaring up, check all your rotary centers. Have any of them decreased from the last time you tested? If so, obviously get the acute symptoms of the elbow treated, but look at actually fixing the rotary areas that likely were the cause of the elbow starting to overcompensate and get hurt. So, and that goes for the back, the elbow, hips, all of those things. So, neck pain. But hopefully that helps, guys. So that's how I would recommend utilizing an assessment process to always assess if you're doing a program in the gym, taking the time out of your day to do it. Assess it, make sure it's actually working, make sure you're improving and you're not wasting your time. So thanks as always for hanging out with me here on the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. Hopefully we diffused a few false beliefs, a few myths, and hopefully turned some of you ticking time bombs into guys and girls that are going to be able to play this game for a really, really long time by avoiding injury and avoiding exploding. So thanks as always. We'll catch you on the next episode.